I started this mini worm bin on November 3rd of 2023. Today it is March 24th, 2025. So the bin is getting too full. Now whenever I add food for the worms or try to mix it up at all, it just starts spilling out over the sides. So I have a few options. One option would be to put a bunch of food on one side for the next 2 feedings. Then all the worms would migrate to that side, leaving this side ready to harvest, and I could harvest all the castings from over here. Another option would be take this all out and put it on a sheet with some bright lights. You can kind of scoop off the top layers and the outer edges because the worms don't like light. They always go towards the center. As you do that, you can just keep working your way down until there's just kind of a pile of worms, and then you can put that in a newly started bin. In this case, I got a new worm bin, so I'm going to be transferring all of the castings and everything into there because I want to be able to fill this up appropriately, and then I'm going to give it a good feeding and get this new worm farm off to a good start. Just so you can see some interesting things, there are some small baby worms, and I bet if we looked around we could find some cocoons right there. So yes, this is a healthy bin. I'm happy to move it to a bigger house, so to speak, so they can hopefully continue to multiply. Worms are kind of self-regulating. If they have more space, they'll multiply and breed more as long as they have enough food. But if they start running out of space or food, then they don't breed as much. This new bigger house should do a good job and be a good thing for them. I'm going to do a little bit of digging in here. I've had a little bit of problem with excess moisture in this bin, so I've been putting a lot of paper bedding in there to try to dry that out a little bit. Seems to be working because this is a fairly good moisture now. Let's see if we can find a good clump of worms to show you. There are plenty of worms in here. Some isopods as well. Oh, there we go. Now we're talking. It's a good pile of worms. I can't remember what I put there, but obviously they like whatever it was. So I'm going to transfer this whole thing over to the new bin. Here's the new bin, and since I mentioned there was excess moisture issues in that shoebox size bin, I put a bunch of dry paper bedding in here, and I'm going to go ahead and dump all of this on top. If I remember correctly, I started out with what I guesstimated to be about 500 worms in this bin, and since it's over a year old, I bet there's quite a lot more than that now. However, since it's a smaller bin, I wouldn't be surprised if they have kind of, as I mentioned, self-regulated and not gone crazy as far as breeding. I'm going to start by scooping some of this in. There's that big ball of worms. Awesome. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I've got a ton of worms in this bin. That's fantastic. It looks like some sweet potatoes they're munching on. That's good to see. There's another good worm ball. Yeah, I've got a ton of worms in here. Nice healthy bin. Let's hope it stays that way with this new one. The idea behind this multi-layered trade system is you have different layers of these baskets. This is the active feeding basket that or tray, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to let the worms continue feeding in here and hopefully eat up some more of this paper and this bedding. And then as it gets close to being full, again, I mentioned it's going to settle a lot from where it's at now. And as it gets close to being full and is mostly castings, then I'll add another tray here on top with some more food and bedding, and the worms will actually make their way up through all of these holes now into this tray. And then I keep putting food in this tray until it starts filling up. But by then, the worms will be all gone out of the lower tray here and into this upper tray, and I can harvest the castings. And that's the way this system works. Now you're probably wondering what's in the trays below. I just have some bedding. There's another YouTube channel called Learn by Doing, and he's really great with vermicomposting or worm farming. And I'm kind of following his example of how he does things. So he has 2 trays of nothing but paper. And then as there might be a little bit of excess moisture or some of the microbes, whatever, condensation might leak down through to this lower bed of paper, The worms won't really crawl into there because it's not moist enough. But then that can be kind of pre-inoculated with bacteria and microbes. And then when it's time to put the next layer on, I can actually take this one that's closest to the current feeding tray, move it to the top, and that will be the next feeding tray. And then I'll move the bottom one up to the next level and start a new one with paper on the very bottom. Just kind of rotates through, and you can always have that one tray that's gonna have some castings in it and one tray that they're migrating to. You can leave some of the worm castings and worms in this shoebox bin, which is now only about an inch full. And I can basically just restart this worm bin, add some more food, some more bedding, and move forward and have another bin working. This particular worm bin came with a Coco Core mat. And you basically put this on top here. It helps keep moisture in so things don't dry out too easily. And then it has an actual lid you put on top. So this bin is now set up and working, though I have decided I want to put a little bit of extra food in here. But anytime I add a feeding, I want to add paper or bedding of some sort to help regulate the pH, help regulate the moisture, all of that. And one thing worms love is cantaloupe. I had some cantaloupe that was just a little bit too ripe and not good, so I'm going to throw that in here, and the worms are going to love that. I have a zucchini that I also forgot about. I stuck it in the freezer. I like to freeze the food before. It helps it break down faster once it's here in the worm bin. And then anytime you put food in, especially fruit, you're going to want to make sure everything's buried by about a ½ inch at least. And I did not put any eggshells or grit in here at this time because there you go.